What's up, everybody? This is Geoff in Control Rob. Sorry, I was just making sure that it's actually going. What you're about to see is going to be the final video, kind of my series of videos. There's part one and part two already on the YouTube. If you missed that, make sure and check it out. Kind of wrapping up my time with Evil Geniuses and my experience with it and what it has set me up to do. Road mapping this video. This is going to be the tail end of 2013 through now, 2017. Both the other videos covered relatively smaller chunks of time and took a long time to discuss. It's because I felt like they were very formative, very big years in my gaming career, but also more specifically with EG. This time period moving forward is actually going to be a very different flavor. It's going to be a lot of like conclusions and discussion on the people that shaped EG as they move on. But it's not going to be as dense in these stories and well, at least not, I don't think it will be. We'll see. I usually say stuff like that, then 5 hours later I'm still talking. But the plan is to get through that pretty quickly, 4 years, in short order. And to finish off the roadmap, at the end of this video, I'm going to talk about, like I said, kind of each of the figures of EG. If I leave out a name or two, please don't take that as a slight or think less of them. I'm really going to try not to, but inevitably it'll probably happen because there's so many people that made EG what it was. And in my experience and in my opinion, I will try to cover everybody. At the end of that, I would also like to, I'll remind people then, this video is the third and final video as far as covering EG in terms of, from my perspective, just spouting out to you guys. But I actually want to use the comment section of this video. Obviously you can comment, that's totally fine. But if you have a question, if you have something that you feel like I did not expound upon or didn't cover at all, I want you to ask that. Now you're going to have to make it pretty clear that you're asking that question. So I ask that you say something along the lines of like, in control, a question for you or something. Don't just type out a question because there's a chance I might not actually get that. There should be a lot of comments. And then I'm going to make a fourth video where I actually answer those just straight up out of the comment section. It's going to be a kind of an AMA almost, but the questions are going to come from that comment section. So if you post these questions anywhere else, if you tweet them at me, if you post them on Reddit, they will not be included. I will probably read them because I'm semi-omniscient with the internet. I read everything. But this is supposed to be a practice in you guys organizing your thoughts and putting them in a place and then me responding. I will also put this out there, but it probably goes without saying if you follow my channel or content that I produce or anything like that, that if you ask questions that are inappropriate or if there's the same question being asked a million times or if I felt like I already answered the question in these videos, it'll be read, but it probably won't make it into the video. But we'll see, whatever. So, getting into the meat and potatoes of this, 2013, was an interesting year because it was definitely the tipping point for competitive StarCraft 2 to take a different form, basically. Going into 2013, it was the biggest and baddest game. The biggest audiences, the biggest stages, super amazing. And EG was at the forefront of that. Kind of like we talked about in the other videos, Jaedong being a big deal. This is, of course, a little bit past Idra. But still some superstars like your Stefanos and stuff like that. But 2013 going into 2014, that's where we started to see more retirements and more people kind of moving on. Thorzane comes to mind. This is someone that was a huge part of EG. We made a big video announcing his arrival. One of the best videos we ever made, if you want to check that out, on the EG YouTube channel. And like kind of like the coming and going of Stefano as well as a full-time competitive player, one of the big names of foreigners that could actually compete with Koreans. And for EG, it was an interesting year as well because this was about the time, and I think this happened early in 2013. I believe so, or maybe it was mid. I don't know. Dates and stuff, numbers for me kind of elude me, but it was around 2013 that EG also made the decision to move a lot of us to San Francisco and really grow the company. So they got an office downtown, kind of a old school tech building type inspiration. It wasn't a tech building, but it was like, it had other companies in it. It was just a red brick above a bar, financial district. They got an office, and they moved in a lot of the big wigs of EG and a lot of the content producers and a lot of people that made that machine flow. So my former roommates, like your Sean Green, Conrad, my wife Anna and others all moved into this office, and for the first time as a company, they became a company for the most part. You know, Alex was running EG out of his apartment for the most part, or on the road doing deals. He was kind of he was the lead guy, but also the salesperson. But under one roof, they finally put Colin in there, one of the guys that kind of his right hand man, I would say, with EG. And then, like I said, all the people I just named, as well as a few others. And then we tried to move in like our financial guy and one of our other salespeople, and really, really make something of this. But then they also wanted a lot of the key figures or key players to move to San Francisco so they'd have access to them for content. Because again, this is kind of an interesting discussion that I haven't really touched on. In the previous videos, I was asked about transitioning to a commentator, but one of the other interesting transitions that was occurring was from, you know, players to media people, kind of. You were still expected to play and win and have a following that way. And I think, again, that's a part of the reason why Idra was as struggling and stressed as he was, is because he wasn't left to just play. There was so many more responsibilities with EG, and that's kind of the blessing and the curse, is that you were expected to play, win, and have a big following, but at the same time, you got to do this video, you got to show up at Kingston, you got to, you know, and that makes sense. I'm not demonizing this at all. That's how the world flows. Even professional athletes face this struggle, but I think part of the difference is that professional athletes are treated as separate entities that have their own business as well. So they have a PR guy, they have a manager, they have people that make sure that they're getting paid for that. They're being protected, so if it's getting to be too much, that's another thing. But for us esport players, that doesn't happen as much. So a lot of times the stresses of managing that yourself can make it kind of difficult. And that was kind of what was interesting. That was what was happening at this time. So EG, and this is another one of probably the second most contentious moment in my EG history, was when Alex was like, "Yeah, we need you to move to San Francisco," and I was like, "Oh, that's pretty exciting." You know, let's talk about the nuances of that. Obviously, there should be a raise because the cost of living from not paying rent to paying my rent in the most expensive city in the country while also being your employee, it should be taking effect. And, you know, you're going to help move us, right? The answer is no to both. It was like, no, I pay you quite a bit, and, you know, you're just going to move, or you're not going to have a job. It wasn't put quite, so I want to be very honest. It's not like he put a gun to my head and said, this is how it is, or you're fired. But that's what it boiled down to, and that is an honest rehashing of that. It was, well, that's fine, you know, this is what you need to do to be on EG, and if you don't do this, then, you know, we don't have as much to justify your salaries. What kind of ended up coming out this way, and that is not super pleasant, by the way. I'm not gonna excuse this as like, oh, it's just business as usual. No, it's a theme that is obviously everywhere in business, but I find it to be a very common trend in gaming in particular. As kind of an aside, and I'll talk more about this at the end of this video because it's gonna segue into my current career and where I'm at now. But there's a lot of the ethos behind argumentation in esports is you're a silly gamer, you're not a real person, and if you want this thing, you're going to have to play by my rules because I am a real person. I do business and I conduct real life things. Obviously, there's a plus or minus to that in terms of the severity, but that is actually a very common trend in terms of how gaming people, but more specifically here, esports competitors, are corralled, essentially, and moved in directions. So obviously, for me, as a person that gave up everything but also has poured his entire soul into this industry, when I'm faced with the decision of like, well, you can lose your home because they're going to close down the EG house, not out of failure or something like that, just because they're transitioning to San Francisco. Lose your position and go out into the unknown without a salary and you know, do anything. You can try to make it work or whatever. Or you can continue on your way with a very good salary, by the way. It's not like they were paying me not a lot of money. My salary at that time going to San Francisco, the one that I had just signed, was $6,500 a month. That's a very good salary. Now in San Francisco, that's a lot less good, but still manageable. Certainly, it is manageable, and that is, you know, that's not my sole source of income. If it was, that would be a lot tighter. But by that time, I was a pretty prominent commentator. I do shows, gigs, that kind of stuff, and then streaming at that time, by the way, did not actually earn me any money. That was another kind of funny thing. Not a super big deal, but EG was always kind of pining to have a packaged subscription deal where we were all under the same thing, and then more people sub to that, and then I would get a portion of that. That never actually happened. That never came to shape. And every single year, when myself and several other EG people went to EG and was like, "Yo, we'd like to get partnered on Twitch and start earning money that way," they were like, "Nope, hold on. We're gonna do this big thing. If you do that, you're undercutting us." And it never happened. And then eventually, I think in 2014, actually, as it was, they were like, "Okay, go ahead. We're not going to do that." And we're like, "Oh, cool. 2 years of not doing this. It's rough." But again, not demonizing. EG was like thought they had a bigger thing to do, and they thought that would be obviously good for them, but pretty good for everybody else as well. So, anyways. So that wasn't really an option for me. So I expressed that I was frustrated and I didn't like that I was being pushed that way. But I said ultimately, okay, I'll do it. So we moved to San Francisco. Anna scouts out an apartment, really nice place. Obviously, when you move to California, there's considerations of like safety, location, cost. She nailed it, and we've been really happy ever since. She would commute down to San Francisco as a full-time employee of Evil Geniuses, working with their production every day, and then I kind of stayed at home and was a EG team member and captain, and definitely a part of some decisions. And I would go into town and film things like Judge Jeffrey, I think we called it. You can see some of those videos. These are all on the EG YouTube channel, as well as some of our partner videos like HyperX and Kingston at the time. They made some videos there as well, or we made videos for them. But other than that, my day-to-day kind of consisted of being basically a full-time streamer. And again, this is 2013 we're now in 2014, where I was a partnered streamer and was getting subs and working on that. But otherwise, I was a salaried EG employee. But this is a very interesting and dare I say, kind of the Empire Strikes Back dark time of my career with EG, just in that this is around the time, but we're backtracking a little bit. This is around the time it was in San Francisco where EG fires Idra. We talked about that in the last video, but that was very sad. Machine started to kind of step down and move more into the role of being an employee to EG as like an office manager type position. So he was playing a lot less StarCraft, and that's not a bad thing. That's not a dark thing. He wasn't moping around and sad. But there is, it was his choice, and it was definitely the natural progression of things. He wasn't enjoying competing as much, but it is interesting seeing someone that is on fire and alive when they're competing, and that's like what they're meant to do. When they move away from that, there's a little bit of the feeling of like, being put to pasture. A little bit of like, yeah, I'm still happy, but there's that kind of feel to it, where you are happy, but you're leaving behind something that you loved beyond love. You had a deep burning passion for it. There was a lot of that feel with myself in the team and EG at that time. So Machine's moving on. It just fired. Like I was saying, this is about the time where certain people started to kind of float away. Suppy went from full-time competitor, traveling to China and doing really well, and being one of the top-notch North American Zerg players, to becoming a full-time student again, and really focusing on his medical studies at Berkeley, I believe, which is incredible, by the way. He's an insanely smart, really capable guy, and I'm going to recap just about everybody at the end of this, but just know that Suppy was another one where he really liked competing, but from what I can tell, and he would give the best answer to this. I can't speak on his behalf, but my opinion, looking out, going in, is that he's really happy and excited and doing well in life. Like, it wasn't a sad thing to move on from full-time competitive StarCraft. Not so much so that it like permeated in his life, I guess. I'm sure there's certain twinge of sadness, but not a defining one. And then, people like, I would even say Huck in this time began an interesting journey as well. And to again clarify, this is best to come from him, but my opinion, looking out, looking in, is he went from, an absolute top-notch foreigner, bigger-than-life personality, to not winning as much, diversifying his time and energy a little bit more, streaming some, but even that, not that much, just kind of hitting that middle of the road where they're just a little bit more unsure about StarCraft. And again, this is all, I say it's 2014, but like imagine 2014, 2015, it's a floaty period of time, because this is all kind of similar to me. I'm not super specific on exact dates and year at this point in time. This is going to be a little bit more evasive in terms of specifics. And then even myself, like I was saying, going into San Francisco, I still thought of myself as a professional StarCraft 2 player. But obviously, I was constantly answering the question of, like, I'm doing so much commentating and I'm on shows. What do I call myself? So a little bit more of a hybrid thing. But I would say San Francisco is where it really began to be pretty clear that I'm a content guy. I'm a personality. I'm a streamer. I am not a full time, or even I'm not a professional StarCraft 2 player. I still played StarCraft pretty I say pretty, but that's being scientific. I played StarCraft 98% of the time at home, for a good 5 to 10 hours. But what I really started to experience is when you're not going to as many tournaments. So like most of the tournaments by this time I'm commentating at or hosting as opposed to playing at, and you're just at home grinding ladder games or playing custom games, which I didn't do as much, obviously. The excitement of StarCraft that I had known started to diminish quite a bit, and I started to have a pretty big exponent, like a crisis of identity, essentially, because all I had known was playing StarCraft competitively, going up into that point. And at least, even if it wasn't super in practice, it was definitely in my mind still that that's what I did. And it was becoming pretty clear that that wasn't going to be the case. Again, we're even in 2015 at this point in time. And that was tough. I was not enjoying laddering as much. I was not enjoying playing StarCraft. If any kind of balance issue at all came up, where, like, for whatever reason in the meta, Protoss was suffering or certain maps were hard, I found myself being quicker to be upset and angry about it. There's no, like, weird story about me knifing a pillow and crying softly into my bed alone in a dark room or something like that, but there's definitely, like, I'm streaming and I'm getting way more sassy and frustrated than I'm comfortable with, and a lot of that was coming from this transitional period, but also this kind of slow realization that me playing StarCraft at home alone in my apartment all day was not the existence that I was wanting. And now I know that doesn't sound super interesting to a lot of people, but for me that was really weird, because I was happy playing StarCraft 10 hours a day every day of my life, for the since 2009, 2008, basically, Brood War to then. And that's a bit weird. I don't have any way to, like, really describe this, but just kind of know that that was kind of what was going on. But all the while, EG was continuing to do really well, and it was 2015, I believe, that the beginning of the year, I want to say January or maybe it was December, somewhere in that area, it was finally, again, not super specific, so I'm going to be like, Geoff, it was July of 2016. I don't know. It wasn't 2016, but the dates I don't know, and I don't have them in front of me or something like that. That's not this kind of video. But EG gets acquired by Amazon, and that was massive. I did not see that coming. Obviously, the very top of the company, your Alex Garfields, your Colin DeShong, and some of those guys did know this was coming and were working on this. But it was something of a subject that had been talked about a few times in EG. It's obviously a gigantic company. There's a lot of people coming into esports, so there's a very attractive opportunity there to sell the company, and if sold in the right way, make a lot of money and still have your cake and eat it too, basically, by managing the company but not owning it. And that's something that kind of happened here. The company gets purchased, and Alex and Colin and all their infinite love for flair, which is awesome. I'm actually the same way. I really I enjoy the show. They had us meet at the offices, and all we knew is we were going to, like, a Christmas party of sorts. So we were dressed nicely. It was the whole company that was in town, and we were then picked up in limousines. We were driven to a steakhouse in downtown San Francisco. Coincidentally, it was called Alexander's Steakhouse. No relation to Mr. Garfield. And the entire place was rented out. We had name placards there in our seats. We had a 3 or 4 or 5 course meal of extravagant value. And we were given a gift. We opened the gift, and inside the gift is an iPad. And on the iPad was the announcement that Amazon had acquired Good Game Agency specifically, but that was what we all were. We were Good Game. EG was the, one of the arms of that company. And this was gigantic. So, as well as at the dinner was a signing for most of the company. There was documentation about what their new contract would look like. their benefits of being an Amazon employee, and transitioning from Good Game Agency to still being Good Game Agency, but being owned by Amazon and acquiring their kind of new standard of living, essentially. And this was amazing. Each person was given a pretty sizable raise in a lot of ways, signing bonuses, benefits, things that they didn't have. They were being given a real job. And I remember this is actually a very pointed, interesting moment in my life and career, because of everyone there, I was the only one not given this. They were like, well, you're transitioning from kind of a player to something else, so we need to delay this, and I'm going to look for a role for you, and we're going to give you that contract. And I remember being like, it was a really confusing, weird day for me, because on the one hand, I felt like I had a hand in growing EG. I felt like I was a big part of why it was where it was, and I was really excited. I was proud. I was happy. Alex is to me, he's like a family member, so I'm like very excited on his behalf, because this is someone that started a company in their dorm room, and over the years has grown it into like an industry leading thing. So when they told me this, I had a strong, like, weird. It's such a weird feeling to be so happy, and then to be punched so hard in the stomach, that you're still happy, but you know that the air has left your lungs. So it was weird, very, very weird. But it was always under the assurance of, like, we will find. He looked me in the eye, sat down next to me, and was 10 inches from my face, and was like, look, I'm going to work night and day to find you a role. This is only temporary. It's going to be a month, 2 months tops, and we'll have this figured out. And I was like, well, that's great, Alex, because this is really exciting. Like having benefits and being fully employed and stuff like that is the holy grounds of esports. A lot of the people you know and love and follow don't have health insurance. They don't have a retirement plan. They just hope to make as much money as they possibly can, stuff it into shoe boxes, and then go to those shoe boxes when they retire. Or what they will all tell you is they hope to find some company to transition to. This was supposed to be that moment for me, but it wasn't. It was not, and it was made complicated because my role in the company wasn't super definitive. Was I a player? Was I a host? Was I a personality? I was a little bit of all of that. So they weren't comfortable signing over a contract to me, and I had to wait. So the announcement was amazing. I came home, and on this very YouTube channel, you can actually see the video. That video was made the day of that I got home from that announcement. The video is called something like EG is acquired by Amazon or whatever. It'd be kind of interesting to watch that, because now that you know this other part that was going on, I wonder if you can see that feeling, if you can hear in my voice the excitement, the optimism, but ultimately the pain, because that was there. So this is, again, going down that darker path of what happens after that. So after that, I continue to be kind of an unhappy at-home streamer. Unhappy in what they were doing. It's not like I was unhappy in life. At this time, to give you an aside, I was really starting to explore competitive Warhammer. I met some of my absolute best friends in the whole world doing that. Some really special people over at Frontline Gaming, which they now sponsor me, but this is well before that. They painted up my Tyranids. Somewhere in that area, I started working on having an Adeptus Mechanicus army, and I was, a couple times a week just going and playing games and meeting new people. There's an amazing community in the Bay Area of Warhammer players, some of the absolute best in the country. And it was broadening my horizons that way, but it was most importantly giving me a competitive outlet, because I'm the kind of person where if there's any chunk of time in my life where I'm not competing for something, I think I'm suffering quite a bit. I think I'm not happy. Maybe that'll eventually dissipate, and it won't be like a definitive part of my life and identity, but for right now, it's still very true. So Warhammer was taking that up where StarCraft had left it off, and I was really enjoying it. Again, kind of that, it makes sense that I would like Warhammer, right? Like it still has those RTS elements to it, where speed is not a factor so much, but mental acuity, the ability to strategize and stuff like that is huge here. So that's what I was kind of doing. I was, Ann and I were very happy. We're exploring California. We're loving that the the food in the area is just like ridiculously incredibly awesome, and that was what we were doing. But all the time, I was having a little bit of that kind of crisis with StarCraft 2. The other thing, the darker part of what was going on in this time was about every month, especially towards the beginning, it was more frequent. But I would hit up Alex and be like, "Yo, so where are we at?" And he would be like, "Oh, I'll call you tonight." And we had a talk. And he's like, "Okay, here's who I talked to. They're gonna do an esports team at Twitch, and we're gonna do this and that." And it was just kind of constantly, I'm working on it. This is what's going to happen. It's got to be next month. Really sorry. Couldn't get a meeting with them. It's going to be next month. This went on for all of 2015, all year. I wish I could tell you otherwise. I don't like making it sound like people were doing me some pretty bad, but they were. I was just not prioritized. Because there's no story on the flip side, by the way, guys, of like, one day I had a mental breakdown and started throwing my poop at the wall or something like that. There was no reason. There was no there's no dark story of me punching Kevin Lynn in the throat and then spitting on his eyeball or something like that. It just nothing like that happened. All that was put out for me was that I was starving and wanting really bad for more, for legitimacy. Anytime I was interviewed or asked questions, I felt like I gave very good answers. I felt like I did the best I could. But something about me or something about the people that were supposed to be representing me was not working. It just wasn't. So the entirety of 2015, every month or so, a couple times, I would call up Alex. I would ask people. I would fill out forms. I would be told new dates, and it just never ever happened. It did not destroy me. It was very bad and very upsetting, but the whole time I was still being paid a salary, and I was okay. But what I kept kind of putting out there is like, yes, being paid is nice, but I'm being paid to do nothing right now, and that's a very dangerous position for me to be in. If I'm giving value to something, if I'm working towards something, if I'm a part of something, then that payment makes sense because there's an exchange going on. But when someone's paying you because they've promised you something but cannot deliver on it or have not delivered on it, that gives them all the power to eventually be like, well, it didn't work out. You need to find something for yourself. When you were kept in a holding pattern for what stretched out to be a year, it's not a way to live, guys, by the way. It's not a way to live. It's not good. So now we're getting into 2016. This is about the year where I kind of figured that I was not going to be a full-time StarCraft 2 person. There has to be something in the future. Like, I'm obviously commentating once or twice a month a tournament. I'm traveling around the world still doing StarCraft. It's still my biggest passion. It's still my biggest love. But it cannot be my sole existence because my ability to maintain that lifestyle was kind of gone. I'm not a professional player anymore. I'm not at the Blizzard studios that don't exist or something like that. So my life has to diversify. So in 2016, I became a full-time streamer in that I was still salaried by EG, kept in this holding pattern with the promise of something was going to happen there. But I was, day to day just realizing I wasn't going to be happy only streaming StarCraft. So I started playing some other games. Now, what's kind of funny about that is if you look back on 2016, and almost every minute of my life is on Twitch, so you can. It obviously still panned out to be 80% StarCraft or 85, and then 15 or 20% some other things showed up. I played a lot of XCOM 2. I played some Total War. I did play some Space Hulk Deathwing, but when I say some, I mean like 10 hours of it. And then some other games. We played some Halloween themed games with Anna and stuff like that, and some CSGO. What kind of interesting on the CSGO point is that I've now played about 3,000 hours of that game. That's a lot. But when I stream it, my viewership goes from what would be like 600, 700, 1,000 to when I stream CSGO, 100, 150, 200 maybe. And that was kind of an interesting realization for me, where a lot of the people that have followed my journey and have enjoyed me as a personality have done so with a strong liking for RTS specifically, or probably more of the idea of strategy. And when I stream like XCOM and some of these other games that are more like StarCraft, obviously very much so not the same RTS, but similar in terms of what you enjoy, my audience is about the same, maybe a little bit less, and sometimes even more. So that's kind of what helped push me in the direction too of being more directed towards streaming strategy games. Like when an RTS comes out, I want to be your guy. I want to be the guy that you go to and watch. When more StarCraft 2 content comes out, I'm there. When other strategy games are circulating and are fun and interesting for me, I'm there. So that's where this development began. It actually began with CS:GO, Counter-Strike Global Offensive, which is interesting. It's interesting that a game I really enjoy but do not stream successfully is part of what defined my career. But there's that background for you. So now we're in 2016, and this is some of the stuff I'm beginning to explore and kind of experience. And that same thing is going on with EG. Now it's stretched on to a year, so it's becoming a little bit embarrassing. And our conversations with Alex and some of the other people took on that feeling of like, it was not, hey, great news, something. It was more like, still got nothing. I don't, the what's not being said is I don't enjoy talking to you. I don't enjoy this because it's like a monthly check-in on disappointment. I'm not lashing out. I'm not mad. I'm actually being probably too nice during all this. But try to imagine Alex's and some of these other guys' position where they're calling in every month to say they failed again, and it's now month 13 or 14. Pretty bad. But this is where stuff starts to kind of formulate that I think makes it interesting, and this is going to be I'm just going to go ahead and preface this with I cannot go into super specific details for a lot of reasons I'm sure you can imagine. If you can't, then someday you will when you're older. I'm not going to go into super specifics on names, but this is where the demise of EG as we knew it happened. It happened under the umbrella of being owned by Amazon and working specifically under the umbrella of Twitch. When they were acquired, there was an immediate subtle tremor that went through esports, but it was not subtle on the behind-the-scenes level. A lot of people were like, EG owned by Twitch, how the hell is Twitch not going to be mega biased towards this one competitive team? Like, they're going to have the best everything. They're going to have first priority on streaming, which is a big deal, obviously, and going forward, a huge deal. They're going to have strategic leverage in all negotiations. Like, it's insane. That can't be fair. And what ended up happening is Cloud9 and a few other organizations, specifically Jack from Cloud9, their owner, went to Twitch and organized a declaration, basically. I don't know if it was actually written down, but this is what they said. This group of people will absolutely boycott all things Twitch if EG is allowed to have a Counter-Strike team, specifically. This is when Counter-Strike was absolutely blowing up. Dota was still massive, huge then, and so was LoL, but 2015 is about the time where CS:GO was the next big thing. And everyone knew that EG comes from a Counter-Strike background and had interest in getting their own team. So that was the gun to the head. And I'm not proud to say, but Twitch absolutely complied. They're like, Twitch and EG, as it were like, okay, yeah, that's not going to happen then. And EG was put on this shelf and kind of left to wilt. A lot of the things they wanted to do did not happen. But there's no victim here, and there's no monster here. I would say EG is responsible for this as well. At the end of the day, they sold their ability to have a say in this for a lot of money, and people, I don't know numbers, but people at the top of the company made a lot of money. As a nice thing, each of the players was given a bonus based on how long they were there, and I've been on EG since 2009. This was 2015. Felt like it was a pretty big part of that. I was given the largest bonus for the purchase, and it was $5,000, which to me was a lot of money, and is a lot of money, by the way. But when the company is bought for several $1 million, I'll let you kind of, you can make a judgment call on where you think about that. But that's part where EG is definitely held to blame, and they sign papers and stuff saying, obviously, yep, you have ownership. We're just going to run the ship and manage it, and that was kind of what was supposed to happen. But in this situation where you do have such a huge advantage, it ends up being the death of you because all the other companies were so incredibly uncomfortable with EG being in such a good position that it froze them. At every turn, the cry would be, yeah, well, you have Twitch, so as your owner, that's not fair. You can't possibly do this, and they were frozen. So again, look at 2015 and onward. How many people did EG sign? What teams grew? What teams didn't? What were they doing? What content were they producing? Were there videos coming out? What was the general feel? And I was a bit sad because I knew this was going on, but there wasn't like much discussion of it actually. EG kind of went out with a whimper. They went from like videos every month, sponsored contests and giveaways, and like really active, super big, growing, announcing the next big players, launching divisions, all this stuff, and then all of a sudden, just nothing, and everyone's like, yeah, all right, next, moving on. So it was kind of a humbling moment. You're in esports, you're basically as big as your last showing, and that's going to be it. So that was the beginning of the end for EG, and then in 2016 was the year where I was streaming full time, basically, absolutely. And I had a really charmed existence. And I kind of joked about this throughout the year because I would show up and play 3 games of Warhammer or something like that, and they'd be like, "Don't you have a job?" And I'm like, "Yep, my job is being me." So it was pretty cool because I was being paid well. I was making good money streaming. I was still going off and doing all the big events, and that was my life. If you could continue that forever, that is the absolute best job ever. I made my own schedule. I did whatever I wanted. I obviously did the best I could to represent EG and our sponsors and be a good employee, but I wasn't being told what to do at all. I was being paid basically out of not quite guilt, but like, the realization that I was being mistreated. And then the call stopped, by the way. It got to a certain point where Alex was bogged down with fighting for an EG identity in its new world. And the realization was like, yeah, I'm working on it. But the messages got more and more pathetic, basically. It became pretty clear that nothing was happening. So what I began was to mentally prepare and look out for myself. In 2016, I was going to ride that ship out, obviously. I'm not going to tell someone to stop paying me. That's fine. But behind the scenes, I'm going to people and being like, what's an opportunity here? What am I going to look at? And this is where having an amazing life partner is all the difference. Knowing this was coming in that year, Anna had always been incredibly supportive, but this is when it really, really shined. It was never like, there's no like throwing a wine bottle at a wall and we're like, well, how are we going to pay for things? It was always, let's make sure you're doing what you want to do. Let's make sure you're happy. Everything else will fall into place. And with that kind of support and that kind of not freedom, but just that kind of like a warm, comforting blanket around you, you can tackle and deal with anything. And that's ultimately what happened. Because again, to kind of try and deliver the magnitude of this to you, I had always done StarCraft. I had everything about my life, where I've been in the world, who I've met, the companies I've represented, the people I've stood before. It's all been because of StarCraft at some point or another. And in 2016, I was realizing that was probably still going to be true, kinda, but was going to diminish and be ultimately taken away from me. That's a breaking point for a lot of people, but for me, it was a strengthening place, and it's because I have such an amazing wife and life partner. So we basically looked at a couple options. I was going to go to Twitch and work there because Twitch is an amazing company, and finding a position in there seems to be what all the cool people are doing. Or I was going to be a full-time streamer. And I initially really didn't like the idea of being a full-time streamer because I have a lot of friends that are full-time streamers, and every time they step away from the computer for a few days to go on vacation or do a gig even, something else, they're really stressed and they're really worried because if you're not streaming all the time, you are rapidly losing subs. You are losing momentum. There's people who will tweet at you and be like, where are you at? What's going on? It's very stressful that way. And I didn't want to be a slave to my computer. I really enjoyed that I was able to do what I did last year in 2016, but also go play a game of Warhammer and not worry that it was going to cost me quite a bit of money, essentially. So initially, I didn't want to do that. So I started sending out resumes that Anna helped build, by the way, and she's amazing at that, to companies. And there's some really weird ones, like Shopify. There was a connection with the guy from StarCraft who was like, yeah, you should apply for this position where you would manage third-party programmers and be kind of a community leader. And I was like, well, you know I have nothing to do with that, right? And he's like, yeah, but I think you'd be great at it. So I went downtown and I interviewed with him and spoke with him. Ultimately, and I think very much so on point. We had an amazing interview. They're wonderful people. They were really polite, professional the entire time. And actually, one of the only companies, by the way, that I applied to that reached out and said, hey, we think you're not a good fit for this position, but we think you're an awesome person and really appreciate your time. And then I made sure to give them the feedback that that is the way to conduct fucking business, man. I hate how common is. We're going to go on like a side rant here, but man, there are so many people that will not tell you no and will just let you, just drag you along. And they're doing it not maliciously. They're doing it because it's safer for them. Because if they don't tell you no, even though it is a no, there's the idea that they're not burning that bridge and they can come back to that later if the deal sweetens or they need you. So they just never say anything. I've had so many conversations with potential sponsors, with companies I handed resumes to, where I'm like, hey, I'd love to work. Blah blah blah. Interview, emails, and be like, all right, well, just let me know. And then they wouldn't say anything ever. And I'd reach back out and be like, hey, how did the talk go? What are your thoughts? Like, I just would love to know something so that I can put a stamp on it and move on, or if you need more, move on. And they'd be like, oh, it's great. You know, we'll talk to you in a week. And then they just kept doing that. And I'm not going to name names, but one of the companies I really respect super did that to me. And it puts you in a weird position where you feel like you have to feel like a needy, like a really mega needy significant other or something like that, where you're like, hey, it's been 3 days and you haven't said anything. What's going on? But you do have to do that. Because that's actually part of the game too, is companies and sponsors want to be felt wanted, but then they have all the power and also want to not give you an answer because that's the best answer for them. It's just, anyways, there's my rant. But Shopify didn't do that. Like I said, they reached out and were like, yo, you're obviously completely inexperienced for this position. We think you're awesome and the world's your oyster, but no. And I loved that. I was very impressed by that. I came away from it not upset at all. And then we continued I sat and had interviews with various different departments in Twitch, and every single time they were like, great, well, yep, we're doing this thing. We think you're great. Let me go home and just iron out the contract or, talk to a few people and we'll get it going. Never heard from him again. A lot of them. And I love Twitch, by the way. This is not me hating on Twitch. Twitch is not, you're never approaching Twitch on the whole. You are dealing with different heads of Twitch. So when I say Twitch, it's almost not fair to say that, but I don't want to get more specific than that because this is not a call-out video. But yeah, 3 or 4 different areas, 3 or 4 different leads of those teams. Great. Nothing, again, there's not, in the middle of the restaurant, I didn't like defecate myself or pee in a cup and start guzzling it. Nothing weird. Great interviews, great meetings, nothing ever happened. My suspicion is eventually what was happening was they were all good and great, but they lost confidence because all I had ever done was compete and play StarCraft. I don't have a resume of like, yeah, I did this 9-to-5 business dev thing, or I worked for such and such content team, or I was at IGN for a while. You really need that. And if you're a pro gamer or anyone like that watching this, don't be afraid, don't be worried, but start having that on your mind. You need to be doing something else, or working on something else, because this ship is going to eventually sink. I don't mean all of competitive gaming. I mean your ship. You as a competitor eventually will not be sustainable. And your backup plan, you got to be working on it at all times. There's got to be something you're going to. I just figured because I'm a pretty charismatic, fairly intelligent, capable person that's been working in esports since literally its conception, that I would very easily find a job at Twitch or whatever. And ultimately I could have ended up somewhere at Twitch, but I wanted to be at a place where I'd have an impact and be really good. And for whatever reason, those positions never really worked out. So that was 2016 became a scary year. But I go back to that idea of having an amazing partner and the comfort that can bring. She's killing it at her job, coincidentally at Twitch, as she transitioned away from EG. And I was doing well streaming, good subs, good everything. Like it was sustainable income. But my drive is always to do more. And ultimately, we talked about it, and she was just like, we're gonna do it. I'm gonna full time stream, and I'm gonna have this amazing support. So she's helped with organizing the stream. She's helped put me in touch with people to, get some graphics done and stuff like that. But also my own community. This came up. Everything you're seeing around this window is by a right hand guy that has to be mentioned right now, Cobra Venom, who I don't pay very well at all. And from the very beginning, I told him I cannot pay. In fact, I didn't pay him at the beginning, but we eventually got to a place where he's getting $100 a month, which is like 1950s salary lifestyle. But he is him and many others. But I got to give the limelight to Cobra right now. They really work hard to help me make my life possible, and people like him, people like Anna, and others, just they are the reason that I am where I am. I've always said that, but I really need to. I say this like almost every day, so it feels like a broken record. But I just have to drill in how important and how incredibly true that is. I've had a very awesome and storied competitive gaming career that still isn't over yet. By the way, it's just kind of changing focus. But all of it could never have happened without Anna, without my community, without special people like Cobra Venom, and without people like EG, by the way, who at different turns did the right thing and gave me the tools to do said right things. So this video ends up being a lot of talk about how EG's, going down, and I've been left out to dry, and it's scary. But I also wanted to really drive home that behind this, there's not a bitter, angry, abused Geoff. There is one that recognizes the entire time that every single day is a gift, and all of this is only because I have been exposed to really talented, special people, and a lot of that's EG, a lot of that's just the amazing luck of finding Anna, and then a lot of that's streaming full time and having some mixture of what I've done has brought in people like your Cobra Venom, and a lot of my other mods, but even just like community people that are in my channel every day and say and do really nice things, or just be there. By the way, that's actually a big deal. There's a lot of people that watch this video that do stream, and they stream to 5 or 10 people, and they know how hard that is. I don't get to claim ownership of that pain or struggle, but I recognize that I'm fortunate to not have that knowledge, basically. So 2016 ends up kind of wrapping up with Alex Garfield departing from EG, and that was really shocking. That was not it wasn't really covered for a lot of reasons, but that wasn't a good thing, by the way. It wasn't like an amicable breakup. That's not that story. That was someone being asked to leave. Not a real firing, I think, but more of a like, this isn't working out, you gotta go. And now they're out of esports for an allotted period of time. EG takes on new ownership, and it's a very young man who led and helps create basically a very successful Dota 2 squad, one of the most successful squads ever. He's obviously an extremely intelligent guy. I think he represents a lot of what EG has always wanted to be represented by. So in that, I'm very comfortable with. But he faces the challenges of like EG had come to be known not just as a competitive organization, but as a media conglomerate, basically, that produces top-notch content about its top-notch teams. And in that area, I don't think he's very good, but that's okay. He actually wanted to refocus EG back to its roots, which is to give young professional players the best tools possible to be the best players they could be. And that's admirable. I hope there's nobody here that's looking down on that, because sure, we'd love to have the old EG that's doing all the things, but if he wants to make it about gaming and arming these young people with the ability to do that, then that's cool. I think people should really respect that. And then there comes, the shaving of EG. I think this is something that, again, very subtly happened. People started to leave and move on to departments in Twitch specifically. Colin is in the esports department. Anna moved on and is now a part of Twitch Studios, where she's producing content and working with them to to really take ownership over content, and she's loving it. AJ, our player manager, moved on to be the Blizzard liaison, but then is now with Echo Fox, so he's kind of returned. I'm going to cover individuals, I think, at the very end of this, but the idea here is that everyone left, and then there's mine, and this was December was my last month of 2016 with EG. It was really sad because I had a couple meetings with Peter about my departure and just kind of communicated, look, I get it. You're not going to pay me this amount of money to do things StarCraft when StarCraft's on the decline, but also EG's interest in StarCraft is more severely on the decline. So I get that. But just please do me the honor of having a respectful departure. I literally said that, which is really awkward for me. It's really weird. But I felt like I had to say that because he wasn't Alex. If he was Alex, I wouldn't have to say that because Alex knew my role in EG and would probably give me a proper send-off. But I said it to this guy because it was more political at that point in time, too, where it's like, it's going to look weird to a lot of people if I'm just not on EG anymore. I am the EG guy. Like, a lot of people cannot separate EG from me. And that's a big part of the reason why I'm doing these 3 videos is to put it behind me, put it in a video so people can reference it, and then move on. Otherwise, in my chat on a daily basis, I would be answering questions about why I'm not EG anymore. And I probably still will. That's my cross to bear. But I want to at least have these videos so those people can look dumb. Whereas if these videos don't exist, it's me that looks dumb. But it didn't happen. The final day of December came and went. My contract expired. My salary was gone. My connection with EG was severed. And nothing was said. Not a single thing. So the night of, I didn't like wait a week, by the way. Pretty sad, pretty upset, and not okay with it. I tweeted on New Year's Day that this had happened. It made me very sad because it did. And I'm always going to be honest. I'm always going to be a pretty straight shooter. Obviously, I'm able to keep my lips shut about, inappropriate names or NDAs and stuff like that. But for the most part, if you conduct yourself really poorly in this gaming sphere, and it needs to be discussed, it's going to be discussed. And this was bad. This was really bad. Taking ownership of a team and basically letting contracts expire with people that had built that team, and you knew that because he was a part of it as well. And just not saying anything is like mind-numbingly bad business. Because we're not asking for $1,000 video about how I was God's gift to StarCraft or something like that. You literally just have to write up 500 words, put a couple of pictures in it, and then you look good, they look good, and everything's fine. And it takes an hour to do. Tops. It would take me 20 minutes because I don't put that much time into stuff like that. But it would, it would look good. To just not do it is the opposite of that. It's actually terrible. He eventually reached out to me and we talked it out. And he communicated. He's like, "Look, I'm disappointed that happened that way." And I didn't let him off the hook. I was like, "Hey, it's weird that you're disappointed because that's actually where I'm at right now. Like, I explicitly told you awkwardly that I wanted you to say goodbye." Isn't that weird? Can you imagine? It's like in a breakup being like, "Look, I need you to cry and I want you to feel sad about it." And they're like, "But I don't. I'm happy you're leaving." And they're like, "Well, you need to at least show people that you're sad." That's basically what I said and asked. It was weird. But at the end of the day, we didn't like slam phones down and yell at each other. It was just like I stood my ground and said, "Hey, that's kind of crummy." He apologized, and ultimately the reason I communicated that was because as a young now owner of a big corporation in gaming, I wanted me to be the lesson that when you show due respect and stuff like that, not only is it good for your business, but it causes you a lot less grief. Even if you think StarCraft 2 is diminishing, there's still thousands of people out there that watch StarCraft and love it and bleed it. And of those people, there's thousands more that have moved on to other games but still remember and still appreciate and still have love for their past. So when you tarnish or spit on that, it's just bad business. So anyways, not to harp on it too much. Lesson was learned. And we move on. So now let's talk about where I'm at now, what I'm looking towards in the future, and then I'm going to wrap up with a little bit of a little like a where are they now, how do I feel about them type of thing on EG. So now I am a full-time streamer. We went that route. I've tried to hire an artist to do a shirt campaign and to doll up my Twitter and my Facebook and my just all my things. She's a bit flighty, but her talent is amazing. So hopefully we still do that. Otherwise, no, I'm gonna look for someone else. But the idea is to raise up my game and make it sharper and better looking. In the meantime, Cobra has done all this work, and I think it looks great. But this is not what he actually does. He's a tech guy, so this is like a hobby for him, and I thought he's done an incredible job. But I'd like a professional, so I'm kind of working on that. And then I'm doing full time streaming, which means still mostly StarCraft, but that certainly doesn't feel true the last couple weeks, right? I've been playing a ton of XCOM. Dawn of War 3 is coming out this year. I want to be your strategy hub guy. I'm not there yet. I don't think there's anyone I'm competing with per se, but I want to become really well known as the strategy guy, and that's what I'm working on. I created, pitched, and sold a show to Twitch, which I'm beyond excited about. It's called Fanboys. It's myself and one of my best friends in the whole world, Marcus, DJ Wheat, and we're going to have a guest on a weekly basis, and we're going to talk movies, comics, games, shows, just pop culture in a really relaxed, awesome setting, powered by really talented, awesome people at Twitch like Adam Contini, Josh Shaw. Anna's chimed in with ideas. There's more, but it's mostly Marcus, Josh, and myself that are really powering this. And I think you guys are gonna have I think you're gonna love what you see. It's just Marcus and I have a really good rapport. We've been doing this on JP's role play shows. That's really where the idea came from. We're like, geez, a lot of people. Actually, it's when we didn't have shows. Most people are like, hey, I'm actually really missing you guys talking about movies and stuff. And I was like, damn, there's actually something to that. But it's going to be a fun show with a cool culture, and it's going to be the first of its kind where a Twitch partner went to Twitch and said, here's an idea for a show, make it beautiful. And Twitch said, you're damn right, that's what we do. And that's what happened. So that's going to be a source of income. That's hopefully going to be a brand emboldening thing. You know, I feel like one of my strong suits throughout all of time has been my ability to be entertaining on a show. Things like State of the Game, Inside the Game, and Roleplay, basically, have been a big part of my life for the last, 7 years. Anyways, it's called Fanboys. It's going to be awesome. It should air on February 14th. That's 99% going to happen. I'm not going to say our first guess because I really want to lock that down, but if you watch Twitch Weekly, that's going to get announced and talked about pretty soon here. And then it's going to be every Tuesday. Every Tuesday, I think. Right now we're talking about 1 p.m. PDT or PST. But yeah, I'll tweet about it and stuff like that. But that's a big part of it. Streaming, and then still doing gigs and just kind of. I went out and found representation right now that's in CSA agency, and the idea is hopefully to secure and lock down awesome people to work with and do some fun gigs and just be a gaming personality. But you'll notice two companies already leapt out and have supported me, and that's absolutely incredible. There's Need for Seat, which, boop. It's unfortunate that I'm such a big guy, by the way, because maybe I'll just sit like this all the time, like, yo, what's up, baby girl? Yo. So I can show off the chair more, but they're one of the first ones. Dennis, Take TV, is the person that really helped me connect with them. He's actually one of the best people in all of gaming. My God, it was like I was like, hey Dennis, I'd love to work with Need for Speed, and he's like, yep, I already talked to him. I basically told him you're the best, and they're totally going to work with you. And I was like, Dennis, if I was of that mindset, I would make out furiously with him, or whatever to repay. He's just an amazing guy, and he's another person that has been one of the bleeding and beating hearts of StarCraft, and there he is helping out a StarCraft personality again. So Need for Seat's one of my big sponsors. And we're gonna do videos weekly, and it's gonna be dedicated purely to them. That's one of the things they asked for. They wanted content, so I was like, let me be your content guy. I'm gonna make some stuff. The chair has to be more featured. I don't know. We're gonna have one hanging from the wall behind me or something, or I'm gonna lose 100 pounds and I'll be Skeletor Geoff. But you'll at least get to see the chair. But I believe in the chair. That was one of my big things too. Is I want several sponsors, but I want to believe in them. I want them to be the real deal. Need for Seat is one of those things. I've had a Need for Seat chair the last 5 years, and I'm a big guy, 250 pounds. I sit in this chair about 10 hours a day, and the chair looks perfect. You can't ask for something like it's like bed and chair if you're a computer person are the two most important purchases, because that's going to actually have an impact on your health. So if you're interested, check them out absolutely. And if you do, even if you don't buy one, let Need for Speed know that you're seeing this or hearing it or you appreciate them or something, because that goes a long way in helping me out. The other sponsor is my best buds in the whole world, like I was saying, Frontline Gaming. If you do anything tabletop, check them out. They're going to be giving me and painting up with their paint studio a few models. We've already seen Magnus the Red, that too is on my YouTube channel, but there's more to come. Even if you're not a Warhammer person, just check them out because the models are freaking gorgeous and they do an amazing job. And that model was actually painted in 2 days, I think it was. 2 days. Now, for a lot of people, right over the head. They're like, 2 days? Of course. No, stuff like that usually takes about a month. It's ridiculous. It's art. They're creating art. So that's it. Those are my sponsors. I have representation. I'm going to be a full-time streamer focusing on strategy, inspired, powered, and backed by amazing people like Cobra, like Anna, and like my community. I think this is all possible and awesome. I have produced and created and sold a show, and hopefully, we haven't even done the first episode, but hopefully this is like a funny thing we look back on when Geoff's replaced Conan O'Brien and is really taking off. They'll be like, remember that time you made videos in your underwear? And you're like, yep, I do. You'll have to imagine it, but it's true. I'm in my underwear. And that's going to be my future pushing forward. So just to finish off and recap EG, we talked a lot about Idra. Greg Fields is one of the like most important people I've ever met in gaming. He was an inspiration. He was a friend. By the way, it's weird to talk about him like he's dead. He's not dead. But it was so cool seeing someone that was so successful actually be happier to leave it behind. It was a weird life lesson in that success and money and fame is important, but it's not everything. From what I can surmise, Greg has never been happier with all of that behind him. Whereas he had, he had groupies, he had companies begging for his attention. He had thousands of fans. He was made famous by words. It's incredible how big he was, and yet it's also doubly incredible how happy he is to not be that anymore. It's inspiring to see, and it's crazy cool to experience because it's a good life lesson that I learned through somebody else. We talked a lot about Jaedong, but really what I just want to leave behind with that is just that he is actually an inspiring, amazing human being and figure. Despite the language barrier, despite, not spending all the time in the world with him, but spending pretty good time with him, it was amazing how quickly and awe-inspiring someone can be. Like how impressive they can be, I guess. Machine was a groomsman in my wedding, and I consider him still one of my best friends, even though we don't talk that much. I'm not really big on that. I don't reach out and say, how you doing, to a lot of people, even though I probably should. He's an interesting guy because throughout my entire gaming career, even before EG, I've always had really special StarCraft friends, but he's one of the ones at the forefront where like they would be struggling with something like real life issues or injuries or medical issues, or I would, and they were there for you. A few of my friends I've met in StarCraft would take a bullet for me and vice versa, and it's incredible to have that kind of a bond. But he's way up there. And Machine's like greatest fault, you know how like sometimes you hear the job interview where someone's like, well, my biggest weakness is that I don't have any weaknesses. His biggest weakness is that he's too nice. He's like literally the nicest guy you've ever met, to the point where it does him harm. But that's kind of cool. If your biggest issue is that you're too nice, then I guess you're doing pretty okay in life. And then there's people like DeMuslim. DeMuslim was a interesting roommate to have. Very basically like a living puppy. Like anything he said or did that was wrong came from a place of like innocence. So it was really hard to be mad at him about things. And he also was one of the people that had a very like a emotional existence that I really appreciated. He was one of the people that cared about how people felt about him, or would be there to talk with you about stuff if you needed it, and was actually kind of actively interested in that. And then he was a guy who I felt like for a lot of us, and I have to remember too that I'm like 5, 6, 7 years older than most of these people, so it was really cool to see someone in their journey on self-improvement and be pretty actively aware that was something that they were on that journey for. That sense of maturity is found pretty commonly in StarCraft people, because I think StarCraft people are very, they tend to be very cerebral and very critical, and pretty self-aware about some things. I would say about some other things they're not. But Ben was an impactful and cool person to be around, because they actively wanted to improve, I think, and did not always succeed in that, but were trying, and that was a cool thing to be around. He also has the unfair advantage of a super sexy accent. British people can go, fall into a pit. Suppy and Lebo, we talked about them. Unfortunately, I feel bad because they were never a part of the kind of core group of people, just because they didn't live in the house and they were, full-time students, or in Lebo's case, were like 9 years old and still ungodly good at the game and awesomely. Lebo's really funny, by the way. If you don't follow him on Twitter and stuff like that, you really should. I think he's a successful gambler now or something. I don't know. But that's a funny guy right there, and I think he's gonna do big things in the world. So is Suppy, but it's just gonna be your typical doctor who's happily married and doing well in all phases of life. How boring. Uh, um, and then there's Huck. I think Huck, of all these guys, is like one of the absolute guarantees to probably watch this video, because, and this is kind of a part of his personality that I really respect, but he really genuinely cares and actually like supports the people around him. It's a cool quality of him. A little known fact of him, and I hope he doesn't hate me for sharing this, but a lot of his money that he won throughout gaming went right back to his family to support them. They weren't always in the best of shape, and he was the one out there doing pretty big things by his family standards, and he gave it back to them, a lot of it, and I think that's amazing. I think that's something that people hear, and I think the full gravity of that doesn't really reach them, because I don't think you've ever been handed a $25,000 check and then gone around and taken a majority chunk of that and said, here you go, don't worry about rent, here's some groceries, let's pay off some of that debt, type of thing. Like, that's pretty special. But Huck too, if he does watch this, Huck, you got to make a video like this, because I'd love it. I know you like talking about this kind of stuff, but also Huck had one of the most interesting journeys throughout all of EG, I would say. He started off as the mega super big star, who was known for being very brash, who very much so was, egotistical. And I say that, and I hope he doesn't take offense, because it just was true. But that was part of his identity, and that was part of the rock star status, and it was kind of cool. But it did hit that point in time where a mixture of him maturing and getting older, him experiencing more things, but then also him hitting a harder scene where he wasn't winning quite as dominantly as he used to, humbled and matured him pretty rapidly and before everyone's eyes. I hope more people give him credit than I see, but that's definitely that's huge. That's awesome. A lot of people would take that lesson on the chin and end up like being defeated or hate or lash out or double down on egoism and stuff like that. He didn't. He just became a pretty damn swell guy who genuinely cares, and if something happens to you in esports, he's one of the first people to DM you and say, hey, I'm here for you. He always has. Like, he and I have not been the best of friends forever, and I don't say that as we hate each other. We don't at all, but we don't go visit each other. We're not like that, but at events we're friendly and stuff like that, and we've talked and we've hung out over the years, and I definitely consider him a friend. But he, more than almost anybody else, is the first one to be like, yo, that sucks. I hope you're doing okay. I'm here for you. And he'll say it privately or publicly, either one. He means it, and I think that's incredible and awesome. But like I was saying, what's so cool about Huck for me is the journey from when he first joined EG to where he is now, transitioning over to Overwatch as well. All of this, I hope he makes a video. It'd be really interesting. Or you guys should demand it from him. And then I want to go far back, and there's some other people that I want to give a shout out to, like Cody Evolai Connors, who now works for Twitch, was an incredible player manager and a really awesome and cerebral guy. He became really good friends with Alex Garfield. He became a good friend with all the players, and ultimately that's kind of part of the reason why he moved on. The stress of managing players, that is one of the most that's probably the worst job in esports if done right for a big company, because it's some of the most work, some of the most stress. You get the most shit. You're not getting paid like anybody else. It's incredible. It's ridiculous how hard it is. But he did it. He ultimately burned out and was happy to move on to Twitch. But for his time with us. He did incredible work and became a good friend. It was awesome to have that. And then AJ, I don't know if I've ever met a guy more emotionally connected, specifically to the fighting game players. It's like a fatherly role for him, and he's obviously he'll cry if you mention it to him, because he's just that emotional. But that's awesome. He too had a really cool impact on us because he brought a different flavor to EG. He brought like the soul, emotional feeling of EG as opposed to kind of like the business first and then human interaction after. And that was kind of an amazing experience to have there as well. My phone's getting blown up. Sorry, guys. I don't know. And then, like I said, I'm not going to be able to cover it. I just realized how silly it was that I even began to do this because there's like 45 people. So I'm only going to touch on a few more. And if I leave you out, yeah, I'm just sorry. But I just realized that literally this would take 2 hours if I did it any justice. Colin is someone that also was kind of one of the souls of EG and got almost no credit for it. A lot of the content you saw had his touch in it, but I feel like the business side of EG was more where you kind of saw the presence of Colin. Like a lot of our announcements were inspired by him. A lot of the like Masters League was put on by him mostly, I believe. If someone else deserves more credit, I apologize, but that was my understanding. And then a lot of the times the posts in Reddit where EG's mentioned, even now, or StarCraft, he actually just made a heartfelt post where he talked about how StarCraft is what helped launch him to the position in the world where he is now. And that's especially important for me to see. Like, it actually made me emotional because it's true, and it's so cool to see that recognition from Colin. But Colin and EG, there was this thing that happened, and it broke my heart, but EG was very strongly labeled and stereotyped as like the faceless void of just money first, greed, don't care, pick up whoever. They become worse and bad because EG, I don't know, pays them too well or something. This stereotype, and it was really strongly in StarCraft 2 specifically. I was screaming on my shows and on my channels and on Twitter to like tell people to fucking just take my word for it or work to look past the stereotype. It's not true. We're a family. It's awesome. And there was no business reason I was doing that. But what was happening behind the scenes is people were becoming disenfranchised with StarCraft even before the viewership decline. Because of that stereotype and because of the community so aggressively like putting down everything we did. It obviously it was the vocal minority because our views were still fantastic. Our company was doing great. But it was so negative to be around StarCraft. And the reason I mentioned this during the Collins portion of this is because I saw it happen to worse than almost anybody else. Because he was that guy pushing out content, making leagues, and doing stuff. And it really hurt my soul to see that happen. But he and a few others were just like, all right, we're kind of done with StarCraft. And a big part of that was because of how negative the community was towards EG specifically. But for him to recognize that StarCraft 2 is still what got him where he is, and he owes a lot to that, and for him to be the kind of guy who, even now, working at Twitch, having nothing to do with StarCraft for the most part, to reach out and say those words, speaks a lot to the kind of person he is. He is also an emotional person who, if you've done right by him, or if he feels like you're part of his responsibility, you're going to get treated really well, and you're going to be treated with respect because that's kind of where he comes from. He was also the kind of guy who a few times, and this sounds really small, but it's actually so huge. It's such good business to do this. We would do a video or something would happen, and he would reach out and be like, "Hey guys, I actually already ordered you guys movie tickets, and I want you to go see a movie this Friday on EG, on me." And a bunch of us players in Arizona would go do that. And a few times here in San Francisco as well, it was like, hey, have a dinner on me. Or if a birthday rolled around or Christmas, he was the guy that got you a gift card. And I know to a lot of people, the gravity of that's not going to really sit with him. They're like, yeah, okay, he bought you gift cards and he took you to a movie. But Colin is not, he's a friend, obviously. And again, I'm trying to illustrate this, but he's a business friend. He's a person who I met through gaming, and I worked for him. But he did the little things that make you feel like there's more going on there, and that's such good business, but it's also just being such a good person. And that is not the norm, by the way. That doesn't actually happen that much elsewhere. But that's a little flavor that he brings, and it makes you feel like there's more going on than just you are an employee. So I thought that was awesome. And then Alex Garfield, this video in particular, I spent a lot of time talking about how he basically let me down, and that really sucked. But I really hope that that's not the flavor we're left off with, because what I've been trying to be very clear about throughout this entire thing is that I have StarCraft and gaming in my blood. It's something I was going to do no matter what, because it's my calling. But to have been drawn to EG and to have been taken up and given the tools I was and given the opportunities I was because of Alex Garfield is beyond lucky. It's incredible. I would not be anywhere near where I am right now if it weren't for these opportunities and the support that I received. There was, like I said, I think it's video 1, maybe 2. There's various times where I tried to quit EG, guys, and he just was like, "No, you're not," because he knew better, and it was for the better that I didn't quit EG in 2010, like I tried to. And he took care of me. He did awesome, and ultimately, even in the letdown period of 2015 that I was just talking about, I think it came from a place, ultimately a failure is where it ended up, but it was definitely like a drive to push a ball up a hill that just wasn't really going that well. But he's an incredible leader, and that's part of what broke my heart so much about the EG stereotype too, was that everyone's like, wow, he's just this rich guy that just buys up whatever and it doesn't matter. No, we went after the best talent, and that ended up being paying people a lot of money. But it's actually even just funny, the idea of in esports disrespecting and not liking something because they pay too much, or they support something with too much money. It's like, guys, a lot of your favorite players, unless they're a CSGO, Dota, or LoL person, are being paid absolute shit. They're not being paid what they deserve, and their livelihood and their living condition is pretty poor. My hope is that this statement becomes more and more irrelevant as time goes on, and things normalize, and the abuse of people's time and value in gaming becomes less and less of a common affair. But there was a time, guys, where people that you watched stream every day and loved and adored were getting paid hundreds of dollars a month and were barely getting by, when EG was paying people living wages and supporting them and connecting them to companies and places that those other people that you love and adore would kill to do and be. If you don't have respect for that and appreciate that, and the you in this case is me, then there's something wrong, because you need to understand when cool things are happening to you. That's one of the most important abilities to have. So I couldn't say enough other than he's an amazing guy, and he built an amazing thing, and I consider myself very lucky to have been a part of it. And that's what these videos are about. So I've now talked for an hour and 20 minutes, guys. Just as a reminder, at the end of this, put in the comments questions you have, but identify them as questions. So say Geoff or In Control, a question for you, or something along those lines, so that I can very easily see that this is a question you want answered on video. I'm going to make a 4th video in about a week or a little bit longer, and I will answer those questions. And that 4th video will be the final one on this, and then we'll move on. Future videos will be about other subjects and other things, but you can expect future videos. I'm going to be making videos on a weekly basis for this channel, and if that's interesting to you, please do hit that subscribe button on YouTube. It's obviously free. I haven't made a single cent off of YouTube just yet. I do monetize these videos, but I don't know. I guess if you have like 20,000 views, it doesn't mean anything. I don't know. But it's not about the money. Not here anyways. It's more about putting out information and getting content out there that you guys can have as a reference point. But where it is about the money that I need to make to live is my Twitch channel, In Control TV. If you are on Twitch or someone that watches streaming content, please do consider checking it out. Even if you just click that follow button, it doesn't cost you any money at all, but it helps me be able to go to sponsors and go to companies and say, look, this is the amount of people I can potentially reach. And then if you do have money, of course, consider subscribing. I think I put out really good content. You should give it a shot. And even if you don't watch the content, but you got $5 to spare, or an Amazon Prime account, maybe consider it. Just give it a shot. Because these videos, what I'm trying to tell you about is this is my life. This is all about it. And moving forward, I need my community to continue to grow. Because if that happens, then I can continue to do this stuff. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I look forward to your questions. And I hope that this has been as fulfilling for you guys as it has been for me. It's been kind of cathartic to get it off my chest and share it. And then I really do enjoy reading people digesting the stuff alongside me and consuming the content. So there'll be more of it to come. All right, see ya.